Good evening, everyone. I'm K.S. Narayan. I welcome you all on behalf of IIT Alumni Center, Bangalore for the 44th webinar, which we have been conducting online since April 2020. This has been a very successful series, and you had Ashok Kamath, who's been doing this job of introduction. Today I'm doing it. We have an interesting topic today on smarter living, and we have two experts from this domain who will be telling us quite a bit about it. Amitabh Satyam will be the speaker and Ashok Das is the moderator. I encourage all the audience and participants to engage in this discussion via the Q&A box, not the chat box. Okay. We will have a break after 25 to 30 minutes. You will have a good chance to ask these questions during that time. Here is a very brief introduction to the speaker and the moderator. Amitabh Satyam is well known as the author of the book, The Smart City Transformations. This book establishes the foundation of the SMART framework and integrates the concept of governance, technology, economics, management, and sustainability. It's been a global bestseller published by Bloomsbury. It's a reference book for practitioners and a textbook at the world's leading academic institutions, including Oxford University and IIMs. Amitabh is a graduate of IIT Kanpur. From the world of physics, he moved on to the corporate world. With an MBA from the Ohio State University Fisher College of Business, where he also taught for 4 years, and he received the Hazel Brown Teaching Excellence Award. Since then, Amitabh has had nearly 3 decades of leadership in technology-driven organization. He's a former managing partner of SAP and the global leader of telecom consulting at IBM. Amitabh also established the global IoT practice at IBM. So he's had various other leadership roles in various other multinational organizations. We look forward to hearing Amitabh today. Moderating the seminar is Ashok Das. Ashok Das is also from IIT Kanpur for his undergrad, and then he went on to do his PhD from University of Southern California. After his PhD, he worked at MTCI Applied Materials and Aqueous Systems in the Bay Area as well as Bangalore. He's the founder CEO of Sun Moksha. Ashok Das works at the intersection of clean technologies, sustainable development goals, and smart villages. Focusing on the underprivileged community, he has developed a state-of-the-art technology and model to address the issues of sustainable socio-economic development, with a specific focus on smart agriculture, smart microgrids, sustainable livelihood, and smart villages. His innovation and models have received several national and international awards and accolades. Ashok has implemented the solutions into this field in India and is now taking it to Sub-Saharan Africa and the Americas. Ashok has engaged with academia globally on his many R&D concepts for developing sustainable smart communities. He's also been a very active member of many IEEE activities and initiatives. He's also a consultant to several development organizations such as World Bank, UKDFID, ADB, PFAN. So we look forward to this event. I now request Dr. Ashok Das to take over.
Thank you, Narayan. And I'm Ashok, not Dr. Ashok Das, etc. This is our IIT community. And hello and welcome to this exciting webinar where Satyam will be sharing with us some of the simple things that makes our life smarter, that makes the planet smarter. Because whenever we talk about smart, everybody just thinks of only one thing, the smartphone. Actually, this is not the smart. This has made us dumb. The smart thing is actually how do we live? what is the way of living that brings our footprint on this earth lower. We need to reduce our footprint on the earth. We have only limited resources, and if we are not careful with the utilization of these resources, um, extinction is not that far away, right? It may not happen in our lifetime, but it will happen sooner or later. And you know, we have we have had a lot of buzzwords all around. Smart cities, smart villages, smart agriculture, smart whatnot. Now everything is called smart, and so much so that sometimes I was in Jharkhand and we were working on a smart village project. And believe me or not, one of the IS officers, IIT Kanpur, he helped us to start all of this, where it was a holistic development of the village. Then he gets transferred. Another IS officer comes again from IIT Kanpur. We thought it will be good. He said, "What do you mean by smart? Give them WhatsApp, to teach them how to do WhatsApp and teach them how to use Gmail and give them Wi-Fi. The village becomes smart." So that is the perception in many of us that smart means access to internet, access to smartphone, and e-connectivity. But that is just the drop in the ocean. Smartness involves a lot of things. From our perspective, in fact, I think the Indus Valley civilization was the smartest civilization. We were really sustainable. So how do we really why did we move away from that style, no, that type and style of living to what we are today? Everybody is running around, smog, fog, what not, flop, you know. So how do we deal with it? And today we have Amitabh, so we know each other for a long time in the Bangalore chapter, and we have known, he has been at IBM, he has seen we have already heard what he has done, and today he's going to touch upon simple things that really make us smart. Hand over to Amitabh. Amitabh, please.
Thank you, Ashokji. Yeah, I'm here. Can you? So thank you, Ashokji. Thank you, Narayan. Thank you, Sushila. It's been great coordinating for this and been looking forward to this. Sadly, I don't have a doctor that I can drop like Ashokji or Narayan can. So we have to go by just my name anyway. Good to have this conversation today. I know that earlier when I wrote the book a few years ago, there was a talk of bringing me into this conversation for smart city, and then but then I went away for 2 years. So I'm happy to be back here in Bangalore and then having this conversation with you. Let me also in the meantime share. So as I talk, this used to be an hour event earlier, but then hey, you can see this, right?
Yes, Amitabh.
Okay, good. So I will use this one. Great. So, so the topic is a smarter living. It's a small things, and the reason I specifically talked about the smaller things because I know that since 2014 in India and even maybe 10, 12, 15 years earlier, starting with small things that happened in Barcelona and all of together over time, it created this momentum called smart living or smart cities. The history is not very old, and there are different names for so-called future city, better city, intelligent city, a smart city. There are different names, and they all mean different things. They all come from different directions. But the smart city name has stuck, and possibly because of Cisco or whoever. No, that's not Cisco, but somebody gave a name, and then IBM was talking about a smarter planet. So all of that together in the last 10 years or so, the smart city term has become the default term. But what it describes and what it does not, etc. We will talk about it a bit later. So what I've done is I've divided this, like Narayan said, there's a break in between for question answers after 20 to 30 minutes or so. So I have a smaller presentation in the beginning just to create the context, and I will talk about the smaller things that we could be thinking about, and at least we should be training ourselves to think on those lines, the smaller things that we don't do or we can do. And then in the second half, I will bring it all together into the framework of smart cities, and then also my spin on how to address the topic of smart and how it all comes together. All right. So, we have a home, we have an office, and we travel. So that I have a few examples about so-called small things, and they use these references of traffic in Bangalore. I mean, it's anywhere for that matter, but I'm talking Bangalore in more. And then we have home and office, so I'll bring those examples. So anyway, that introduction you already have. First example here, just as, like I said, a small thing. So let me just talk about a small thing. Typically in an office, and I picked up this data earlier today, the amount of energy spent is 20 kilowatt hour per year per square foot. So therefore and that is equivalent to 680 liters of natural gas per year. So per square foot is 680 liters of natural gas per year. And that converts to 13 million liters for a 20,000 square foot office. I imagine 20,000 square foot is like a small startup that is just about doing well, or maybe 100 people office, 200 people office. So that's a small business, but they consume 13 million liters of natural gas per year just as an energy for heating, cooling, server, all of it, primarily just these. I converted that into liters per day per person. You can imagine how large the number is. So I have deliberately taken US figures because they are much higher than us, but at least most of the so-called developed world is like that because they have more extreme conditions of weather. Ours would be lower, but not be significantly lower. In Delhi, etc., is very hot anyway. And then you add the cost of extracting the natural gas and refining, transporting, and all of that cost. It adds to huge amount of energy. So when we're thinking about office space, or we're thinking about a work area, and that we believe it's like a small tiny 100 square feet, but then look at the amount of energy we are spending in just letting it run. It just happens that we are paying something in rupees, like 10 rupees per, etc., etc. So we don't feel so bad. But look at the actual content, which is independent of measurement of dollars or rupees or rubles. It's an actual material that we are counting, and that is how much we are spending. Now, if that is so, let us be aware of it. Now, what do? We have to figure out. I'm not actually offering a solution here at this time. Awareness is already good, and now there are different ways of dealing with it, and there are solutions, and we can talk about that another time. I mentioned the word my Bangalore office because I ran a company called Mobi Apps in 2004 or 2007, and I used to ask my admin people to open all the doors and turn the air conditioning off because Bangalore is such a nice place. You don't need air conditioning. That was not considered acceptable business because, oh, noise and this and that. I agree. Some of the costs were there, but to me, some of those minor things were significantly less important than the fact that we are cooling and closing the windows and cooling it, and then wasting energy. So that's the mindset about how do we do this. I know that those who live in the US, they're also aware of this extreme energy costs of heating and cooling. Some of that is required, but in another one of my upcoming books, I'm talking about having to wear tie and suit in Delhi in summer, and then air conditioning is fighting very hard to keep the temperature from 25 down to 20, so you can wear a tie and suit. And imagine this 5 degrees is in billions of dollars of rupees if you do it for all the offices. So this is the mindset thing, small thing, but if you think about how large it is, like an example I gave, that really turns me off, that we are expected to wear a tie and jacket in an office where outside is so hot and we are pushing the air conditioner and wasting energy just to kind of look good. with that, we have to fight that mindset. So that's one example that I thought I give you with office. This is another one that happens all the time. This is in everywhere in the country. We don't have lane driving. And every time I drive from office to home, and it's like 5-6 kilometers, and there would be a motorcycle or a scooter guy will come right in front. I mean, they just come in because, they are more maneuverable, and they do that all the time. Everybody knows. Now, so I have to brake. I take an example from 60 to 20 to brake. I mean, sometimes you may be 30 to 10, or sometimes you may have to even stop and all that. All of that. So just an example is for 60 to 20. And energy lost, I calculated just typical kinetic energy formula. It comes to 200 joules for a mid-sized car. Now, 200 joules, just think about just the braking to let this one guy who is doing it possibly to overtake somebody or you, or just for fun, is costing 200 joules to me. And then how much does that translate into? A 4 or 5 watt bulbs can burn for about 3 hours. So, I mean, I'm assuming a small apartment of 2-3 bedrooms, you need 4 or 5 bulbs, and that's good enough for 3 hours. That's a typical evening time. So 1 day of electricity for the entire home just wasted, or that much energy is wasted if someone serves in front of you. So that's the cost of doing such things. And similarly, if I'm driving 6 kilometers, I'm assuming 5 or 6 of those incidences. I'm talking about 30 of those serves in one drive, and that's like the cost of using electricity bill for the whole month. Now, we don't realize the braking costs so much money, the energy inefficiency because of constant braking in our city. I know there is a traffic jam, but some of this poor behavior, and I'm going to talk about culture another time, but this adds to so many types of losses, and this is an actual direct energy loss. And I quantified into the number of days of electricity at home, so that you know that when I'm driving from Koramangala to Velandur, I'm actually wasting enough energy just to save those motorcyclists, and spending my own money, which is equal to my electricity bill at home. So this is an example to show how we can quickly change certain minor things. This is just one swerving, then you have other kind of braking and overtaking and all that. Those things will add. Speed breakers, we constantly love to have the speed breakers. We feel that, we are slowing down those damn car drivers and all that, so that they are speeding. I mean, I find it shocking that in Bangalore anybody could ever speed. But then again, you can imagine it's the same thing. Speed breakers, you come down to 5, and depending on how fast you've been driving before. Pedestrian crossing the same way. People just casually cross in front of you. You have to brake. I know the morality thing about yielding to the pedestrians, but look at the cost. Pedestrian doesn't lose any energy because there's a tiny 60-kilo guy, and renewable energy, because humans are renewable, they consume renewable things. But the petrol cost is so high. If you have to stop, and then maybe 6-7 cars have to stop or slow down, so let one person pass. So we need to think in a slightly larger picture about these little things that we do every day, and we don't realize the cost of doing such things. Bangalore traffic, again, as just a minor thing. There was a conference about 4 or 5 years ago. It was all the builders. It was for the real estate. If Realty Plus magazine had conducted this, I was one of the panelists. There was an annual event, and the discussion was about how are we going to deal with the infrastructure 10 or 15 years down the line, because all these builders were buying land and they wanted the roads, etc., to be done. So my take was that 15 years from now, probably the traffic won't even be there, because this was 4 years ago, so before Corona. So I was not predicting Corona either at that time. But I said that people, the whole mindset about traveling to work would change. So don't go on spending money widening the road, thinking that's going to be a linear expansion or proportional to the population, etc. It may or may not happen. And then 2 things happen. One, it was kind of during Corona, we saw that people have gotten used to working from home, and so why go to office? You can work from home. People have discovered that you can save energy and time also, which is not energy, but also expensive to us. And there is actual energy which we are extracting from nature. So both of them can be saved. And in most circumstances, unless you are doing mechanical labor, even that robots can do, but that's a separate discussion. But unless you are doing physically something somewhere, You don't really have to go. And there are a huge amount of solutions, huge number of solutions coming up, which are mimicking our office work, interaction with other, exchanging information, sharing, having a coffee or a water cooler talk as this in you. So all of that is being replicated in the software world. And I'm hoping that over time, people will realize that, what a waste it was to go to office. I'm not even adding that extra cost that I gave you in the first example, that it's how expensive it is to run an office in terms of energy. And then imagine having to build, 200 square feet per, that amount of cement and all that. So coming to think about this in a larger picture, I know that some of these things, someone were to ask me, don't go to office because I'm saving energy. I may not be able to do so because our mindset has not yet changed. We are still thinking of, chal milte hain, let's get together and we go places. That will continue on. But over time, if the mindset change would force us to say, you know what, it's not worthwhile. Let us not do that. Let's not spend money on driving. Let's not spend time on driving. Let's not spend money on office space, etc. So these three things are not necessarily my thoughts. I mean, although I have mentioned in my book that I wrote in 16. So I'm happy that some of those things are working out faster than I thought. But the thing is, these are common sense questions. And I know that we are more thinking about it now. The second thing I wanted to mention is that, make cars smaller. Now, most of us have cars. Those who have cars, they're all large, except the example that I showed you in front, that Bajaj Qute and Nano. Even they're not small enough. I mean, the point I'm making here is that suppose you made cars smaller, the 3 lanes become 5 lanes. Where is the traffic jam then? But then we still need, but you know why? What we always have large cars, 4 seats or 6, 7 seaters. Why? Because just in case. Most of the times we are just one person going to office, sometimes 2, the family. I don't want to get into the details of, oh, well, in case you go out with family of 4, then you need, I know that we can have all those conversations. All I'm saying is that for the current set of usage patterns, large number of cars can be made significantly smaller. And considering the city driving, etc., and smaller does not mean less safe. So those are another, they're not, certainly not. We have 5-star rated cars from Tata Motors, higher rated than some of the Mercedes cars. It's possible. So the conceptual framework that I'm proposing is that let us be judicious about these things, analyze some of the needs that we actually have. We don't give up luxury, or we don't give up our needs, but we deliver those needs in a tightly packed fashion. And I think life will be good. So the just in case that, okay, just in case my in-laws come from Delhi and then I have to take them out, I need a 7-seater. I think that just in case is a very bad way of designing your day-to-day life. We are overspending 2 or 3 times more for 365 times 2 of driving for that 1 or 2 days of exception, and therefore to me, we have to analyze it. One more example I have. This is probably the last one. Is about 20 years ago, we had video cassettes. I had like so many video cassettes, and then audio cassettes. I could not lift them together when I was throwing them. There were so many. And then similarly, I had records, which I have saved some. And then there were a large number of things, all the electronics and thousands of books we have at home. Now everything comes in this package now, right? This is good for all of those things. So if you remove the books, suppose, yeah, I know you won't, because we like to keep them for either reading or showing. But suppose you remove the books, suppose you remove this large, expensive, fat TV that we had earlier. Now the TVs are like this, and you remove all this media, physical media, you are saving tons of space. Now, if that is so, are we thinking that, the 1,500 square foot home that was hosting, I mean, other than clothes, we really don't have many things to store anymore. I mean, I don't know what else. The speakers are so small, etc. So we are not giving up on space. We should be giving up on space. So if you're maintaining the same quality of life, if so much space has been created for you, then you should be okay with a smaller apartment also, because the livable space is still the same after getting rid of all this media and everything. This is again a conceptual thing. No one is going to buy a new apartment just because I don't need anymore. The point is that the whole aspiration thing about larger apartment needs to be retuned and renormalized. thinking that, we actually have more space than we did 20 years ago. And the same apartment should appear bigger, or the smaller apartment should be appearing the same size. And so that is one part. The kitchen example I have, which has not been a big hit. I say that the kitchen is the most expensive part of the equipment, and maybe the people should combine their kitchens. Not for this discussion today, but I think we have been maintaining so many overheads in our head. Yeah, that we have to have this, we have to have that, we have to have that. Let's question them. Many things we don't have to have. Many things. I mean, I'm not talking about cloud kitchen and all that. I mean, that is an extension of this. In fact, 2010, 11, 12. 3 years or so at IBM, I used to be the head of go-to-market for selling cloud to telecom companies. And the example I used to give was just the reverse. I used to say, imagine merging all the resources of a kitchen of the community of 200 people in one place. Imagine the utilization of the same space, and everyone will be using only 10 square foot per person as opposed to 100 to 150 square foot per person. That used to be the logic of defending cloud. But now we are using cloud to defend kitchen. So it's an interesting turn of events. All right, I guess that would be one more, and then we'll be done. Okay, two more. In Holi, there is a huge discussion every year. We hear that Holi we must save water because that's it's such a wasteful tradition that we waste money. We waste water. That's a resource and precious and all that. So I estimated this. I have shared this before earlier also with other people. So 5 buckets of water, 5 buckets is huge because you don't even use that much actually. 50 liters is the water that you spend or waste. One family, 1 or 2 people play, kids, 100 liters. 100 liters is very large amount of very large amount. If you imagine. Now, how much is that? 10 flushes. I mean, one flush is about 10 liters. So maybe some of them have become 8 also. But 10 flushes is all you're spending, and that too in the entire year. But then we are not being rational about these things. The moment we start throwing colors, we start thinking, we are wasting water. This is still wasted. Of course, it's still wasted, but the wastage proportion to what? We use 1,000 liters, a family of 4 uses 1,000 liters per day. In US, 2,000 liters per day. And then we're talking about 100 liters per year. And we're still focusing on that and running campaigns, and Airtel and all those guys do that, which I hate. So the point is, let us be rational about these things. And this is just an example. This is not for environment, but just freeing our mind from restricted mindset that, oh, this is so much. Let's keep a perspective of what we are doing. When we are braking, we are actually spending and wasting energy. And keep that in mind. And I gave an example of 1 kilo of meat takes 10,000 liters of water. That's also true. So, and that 1 kilo of meat is equal to Holi for the entire neighborhood. So keeping that perspective helps us not feel bad when we are spending a little bit of water. We should make an effort on other things like flush can be reduced, suction, vacuum, so many different ways of doing these things. And Holi on its own is not the reason to be worried. All right, last one, auto rickshaw. This is people who are in electrical, electronics engineering, they would probably relate to it more. See, when I'm driving in Bangalore, this is where I get the most theoretical. I get like tons of equations in my mind running constantly, how to optimize this, how to optimize that. When that guy is overtaking, what could be the right way of dealing with it? It's amazing, it's fun. Huge amount of game theory. In fact, I had put a proposal also to one of the professors that, let's do this analysis of traffic pattern using game theory, and I haven't pursued it yet. But just like just there's a ek machhar story, that's ek machhar aadmi ko. So that way, if you have one auto rickshaw standing on the side waiting to get a customer on a 2-lane road, which is like very long, like outer ring road or something, that can cause a 2-kilometer jam. And it does, the signal and theory guys would know that, the information jam travels faster. It actually happens. About some time ago, I was driving from Long Island to Philadelphia, and I had to cross New York City, Bronx, etc. And there was like 15-kilometer long jam. I kept wondering what could go wrong. There was a highway all through. Then it turns out that after almost an hour and a half, I traveled that 15 kilometers, and I found that there was a park where 4 or 5 college kids were taking pictures, and everyone was slowing down just to look at them. And that slowing down was propagating to a point of a huge jam 10 kilometers behind. So we should know these things. And when we find an auto rickshaw waiting on the side, we feel, oh, poor guy, he needs to have. But look at the amount of energy that one incident, that one transaction is costing everybody, in addition to time and inconvenience and anger and all that. So this is the last example. The point is, these examples that I gave are just the little things that we don't think about and we can fix. Imagine fixing these. Our life would be significantly better. Significantly better. We'll have less time, more space, more comfort, no travel. I mean, there are many different ways of dealing, how we can so-called, depending on how you define quality of life, it would be certainly be better than it is today and not cost any more money and reduce the load on nature, the extracting its minerals and things. So what I have in the first part of this conversation, so it's 5:31. So another 5 minutes, Shobji, and then we'll ask the questions. Okay.
Sure.
So I had this some time ago, 4 years ago, one of the smart cities approached me and they said, you know what, this is a small town in Bihar and I want to improve. He was very passionate, CEO of a newly made smart city. And so through someone, he contacted me and we met several times. And so I came up with this 3-5-5-5 theory that I didn't have till then, this after book, but before meeting him, I didn't have. So I came up with this 5-5-5 theory, and that has become my go-to theory now for smart cities. And so I said, you know what I told this commissioner who was the CEO is that, you do 5 things that do not cost you any money. 5 things. And because the moment we think of smart city, as Ashok just said, and we all know that, okay, smart city costs trillions of dollars, Modi is not even giving money, then, how can we make anything smart? It's just talk, etc. So that is politics aside. I said, do 5 things that don't cost you any money. And I gave him an example that you have that same city had 2 large government hospitals. And I said, none of the ambulances, there are 3 of them each, are on the road. So the asset has been there, it has been created, money has been paid for already. That there are people taking money as salary to drive those cars, but you're not utilizing them. So I'm not talking about poor governance here. That's a separate story. But I said revive those assets and instead of just asking for money and to build another flyover, think about doing this first. This will add huge value to the people living here. And then there's no money involved because everything is there. So I said, I didn't use the word process transformation. I said, but use process transformation. By that, I mean, you redefine the processes that will take. So if somebody calls, what happens then? Then what happens then? Then how do we contact the driver who possibly is sleeping somewhere or having lunch? And then how does the driver leave in less than a minute? And how, all of those things. No money is spent and you can do it. Similarly, a large number of things that cities do that cost no money. There are assets there already. This was an example that hit my point home, but there are several other examples I thought about considering that city. But there's large number of things. And I said, and it covers cities, industries. I put IITACB there also for interesting, but I'll tell you later. And homes also, even at home, you can transform your home and say, you know what, let me reevaluate how I'm living my day-to-day things that we do, the way I have stored things, my shirt there, my trousers there, the kitchen, we have utensils there. So many things, you look at it, you will find ways of improving. So this process transformation that don't cost money, it is, I think, is a very powerful way of reviewing our own life and addressing things that we can do to improve without costing any money. Because I mean, I can always buy new things, but is it really required, kind of a thing? All right. So that is my 5 things that don't cost any money. Number 1. Number 2, 5 things that do not cost you money, but it costs somebody money. So this is a very popular format for today's smart city guys, because this is a PPP theory where the private sector is involved and they make money through another way, putting ads. And so the smart lighting is a great example where a company takes over the entire lighting system and the government says, you know what, you put the lighting in, I don't want to give you any money, you make your money however you want. So what these guys do is put up the lights, they put high more energy efficient bulbs, and they make those smart poles, and they put ads and they make money, and they have their own business model in place. Large number of that. PPP is a great example of even building highways. So that's been there for a while. So the government doesn't spend any money, but allows you to make money using, basically legally allows you to make money. And the public benefits, the company is neutral within their business model. The government is happy because things appear to have been done. And the third one is 5 things that do cost you money and that you concentrate there only. So out of the 15 things that you're actually able to achieve for a city, even 10 is a huge win, which costed you no money. 10 is a great win for a city. And but then 5 things you can do. So I was once talking to the earlier leadership at IITK, and I said, create 2 or 3 centers of excellence that are so good that nobody in the world can compete. But instead of spending money and trying to raise everything overall, just make that one iconic thing that, and you become identified for that, that's okay. And then the whole world will pull towards you. I mean, if you look at the big cities in the world, they just have one little tiny thing, and that anchors the whole thing. So same way, create those anchors. And so depending on the city, depending on where you are, you create that one or 2 anchors. And you can, the city that I'm talking about has suggested that you become the #1 silk city in the world. And you can do that. Don't worry about everything else. The academic institutions would come, the medical college will come, everything will come. Once you become visible, people will start investing money, the shops will grow, there will be malls there. You cannot invest, the government cannot make everything, but you should enable it, but create that seed investment. No, this is a very popular way of doing things also. When the government builds an airport, and just airport itself allows the entire economy to grow. So these are the seeds that you sow. And I think that the smart city concept, you can sow these seeds 4 or 5. 5 is too many, maybe you can 1 or 2 which cost you money, but that you can very well manage. Instead of investing in 15 things, you can invest in 2 or 3 things. Ashokji, I think we should stop here because of the time, and then I will cover this next.
Sure. Just if you could turn on some lights, Amitabh, it's getting dark. All right.
Oh no, my light is at the back. Actually, friends, I'm not at home. I'm at another station, and this is not a very convenient place to do this. I will have to change direction possibly. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Is this okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So while we are waiting for audience to participate, I had a few observations and comments for you and questions. First of all, on your just in case analogy, you forgot about one thing. How about when the in-laws come visit us, how am I going to show off? Okay. So there is a social pressure, okay, the in-law pressure. And frankly speaking, I'm living here, I see that 50% of those cars are just lying idle. It's just a prestige symbol that I have a car. What are you going to do with that car? Okay. So that, that is something that we all need to keep thinking. And, there are alternatives now. At least, Uber had changed the way we drive. Uber has changed the way we're going to look at transportation and traffic. And I really, see that Bangalore has been quite ahead by introducing those Vajras, Vayu Vajras, etc. So bus transportation, railway, metro. So what I'm saying is that we are always thinking much, as an individual. Of course, the infrastructure has to be there. We have to talk to the government, etc. But even as an individual, we are not trying our best to take mass transportation or alternative transportation. And carpool has gone some weightage, etc. But that is one way And do you have any thoughts on how do we change the transportation into a much more sustainable and smarter living?
I mean, transportation in particular is a
Mass
deep
transportation.
subject. I have my first hand mass transportation. I know. About that thing about showing off. Sometimes I think that people who have this, I think some of you already have that, and I don't want to make fun of you. That those who have a 1 lakh rupee iPhone, I said, why don't you buy a regular phone which is equally or more capable, and carry 50,000 rupees here that I'm rich, as opposed to having to buy an expensive phone that is so hard to use. Similarly, if you have a 1 crore rupee car, you can have different ways of showing off your money. Anyway, this most of the so-called needs are driven by. Actually, in my book, I have a subheading in one of the chapters called "The Rich Exhale More," and that the foundation of making that statement is that the rich people, when they're consuming more, is actually costs nature a lot more, because of the building a bigger house that costs cement and energy and all that, and building a larger car and building anything that is bigger, and it costs money. Public transport is a problem everywhere in the world. Two things we have to do to get into it. One is that we have to reevaluate the need to travel. That is one, and I'm not questioning that right now as a part of your question. But the second part is, we have to it has to be done by the government. It has to be end to end. Now, if I have convenience of taking public transport, people blame that, oh, he's too rich to take public transport. That mindset is there in some, but not in everybody. I'm very sure, I know Narayan and Ashokji and I, three of us for sure, I know that we would be very happy to take a bus if I can get one within 200, 300, 400 meters from my home and takes me to the place, or maybe one change. But it's not there. And so I don't want to criticize, because I have too much criticism against the Bangalore. So it keeps coming when you ask me this question. But the idea is that the solution has to be created, which allows this solution end to end, as opposed to bits and pieces. How do I get to that place? If there is a metro, then how do I get to the metro? If I'm going to metro by car, then I need to park. If I'm already in the car, why don't I go another 10 kilometers, etc.? So one is the size of the city itself. We have to be evaluated that, we keep growing in size.
Yeah.
Like the whole world finds that Bangalore is the only place to work, which is the number of people, etc., etc. Then you can define all of these things well. But if you keep growing, I don't think there would be any solution. And we have to simply stop. And what happens, there is a natural way of stopping. When the traffic jam becomes more than an hour or two, companies stop coming. So people stop coming, and there's a natural stop. But then, we should define optimum size, which in the number of minutes it takes to get to a school, number of minutes. Define that and honor that, and that becomes your smarter way of living. If it's costing you more money and more effort and more time to go somewhere, that means you are not smart. So the Bangalore, just create an optimum size of the city. Don't go beyond. Otherwise, you need orders of magnitude different scale altogether. It's not linear. It's not at all linear.
Yeah.
Narayanan, go
Yes.
ahead.
Yeah. So a couple of points, Amitabh. One was continuing on what Ashok mentioned, the individual social aspects. You really can't, you require a lot of nudge in order to do it, from at every level. Especially considering you don't even have a gym where people do, a lot of mechanical work to be a smart gym to run their own stuff. So considering that, it's an issue. Regarding the public transportation, with this pandemic and situations like that, where it's going to be an issue where, there has to be more innovation in transportation. So you have these small vehicles, electric vehicles, but with the potholes and the kind of flooding, these have not been tested for our extreme conditions out here. The new EV vehicles, I'm not sure whether they can take the Bangalore subway filled with water. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know whether it's been incorporated in the design.
No,
Yeah. So on
Electric
one last
vehicles
point,
are IP67.
yeah. Okay. So one last little bit on a serious point. This have you thought about with the supply chain issues becoming a big problem for many manufacturers? There has been a movement for local manufacturing. Where at and meeting most of the demands. Like rather than importing solar panels from China, for a cheaper cost, can you do the whole thing locally? Uh, and is it a smart thing to do? So like eating seasonal, manufacturing what you need locally. Is it? I mean, what are your thoughts on this?
Actually, this is very interesting. Actually, the manufacturing plants, if you think about it, whether cars require certain minimum scale because the large number of processes and large volume of material involved, but several other kind of manufacturing. First is if you're making let's say cornflakes in Maharashtra or Mumbai, and if you have to take it to Kolkata, that makes no sense. You should have a manufacturing plant there. But then let's look at the economies of scale. Now, so the cost of transportation versus reduced effectiveness or reduced efficiency of a smaller manufacturing plant. A smaller manufacturing plant cost 50 rupees per box, and larger will cost 40 rupees per box, so 10 rupees extra. If that is so, then people would say, well, it costs me only 5 rupees to transport, I'm making more money. So it costs more energy because energy is freely available, so they buy that energy. But overall, it's higher load on nature, but it is economically more viable for that person to not manufacture locally. So local manufacturing versus global, larger manufacturing is purely driven by these two costs. Now, cars, I have only specific plants, but if it is smaller things like umbrella, etc., they don't travel from that far. So using the critical size or the so-called critical mass of manufacturing plant, it changes. With the newer technology, you can do better also. Suppose you have to do only 2 or 3 units of something. We do 3D printing today. We don't really set up a manufacturer. We don't send it to China. So, I mean, there is no clear-cut answer, but the thing is, one key driver is to reduce overall energy cost because the world needs to save energy, and therefore the rupee value of the cost may be better. Even then, we should be looking at the cost of energy cost. Energy cost versus rupee cost are two different things. I know they can buy each other, but the rupee cost is something that you spend, you don't worry about it. But the energy cost is something that you have to measure in the number of liters spent, and that has to be minimized. So certain things, like I said, distributed manufacturing is done. Transport, so the transportation cost overtakes the cost of setting up plant, which is very low tech. But cars requires distributed manufacturing. So the way in manufacturing plants are distributed today are how they should be, considering all the aspects of it. Because why else would they not do that? The government cannot. I don't think government should intervene. And so the manufacturing wise, I think we should let it be. We should let it be, unless you want to just add more tax on long distance transport.
Yeah.
Is that what you had in mind?
Yeah. We can catch up. I think this will require a lot more discussion. But yeah, I can see your.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
I was off on content. Fine.
So before we go into, do we get started on the second half, or I would just wanted to touch upon water. You mentioned a lot about water, and water is something that is, see, energy is something you can live without, but water is something you cannot. So water is even more acute a challenge and a problem that all of us needs to contribute. When we go into, I'll give you just, you talked about little things. You open a tap, especially if you live in a high rise like Atlantic South City, water gushes out. Right? And even though you are using it for 30 seconds, 1 minute of water is running, and then a lot of water gone. So what I did, there is another tap underneath. So you go and reduce the pressure. or you use a filter or a strainer, right? That gives you the as if it is a big spray. So there are some little things that we could all do to preserve and conserve water, because water is going to be much bigger of a problem. It has already been a much bigger of a problem
Right,
than
like I said,
pollution.
the next one would be on water. Sheila has just instructed us. So Sheila has just instructed us that we move to the
Yes,
presentation.
we move to the next one.
So what I will do is, Ashokji, after the end of the second half, we will reconnect on this. But when we talk about these things, and I certainly appreciate what you have done, but we have a similar framework, similar drive in my buildings too. I also moved to an apartment recently, and I keep GLS car, but you're saving money on the carpet. 200 रुपया बचा लेंगे उसमें. He's saying that, we want to be careful, we are eco, and so that's why we put 30 to 40. I wish I could just do a live. I mean, I hope I get invited to. I mean, I'll be more interesting talking about some of these kind of skills. How to save money in the kitchen. I can give you 50% saving in the kitchen. All right. I don't think I've been. They would like me to get into that now. So let me go back to my presentation.
Okay.
But
And just before
if
you
you do
start,
kitchen
a
work,
request to the audience, please keep
how easy.
typing your questions in the Q&A box. Thank you.
So coming back to the presentation. So, we talked about this mindset changes, and then when we're innovating, if you look at most of the innovation, they are relating to some sort of a mindset change that, why don't we do it like this? And boom, there is a business model there. Oh, people are loving this, they're buying this. This is a great business model change. And, almost everything that we see there is part of that much change that, instead of going to the shop, why don't we click and someone will deliver? I know this is not really a process change, but primarily a process change, because the deliverable ultimate thing is you having that product with you. So doing the same thing but in a new way is one of the innovations. To do the same thing, you are still buying, you're still doing things, you're doing the same things, but do it in a new way, which saves you money, it makes it less effort, or saves you time, all, gives it more bigger other benefits that you could have. But it's a kind of a process transformation. But you doing the same thing is one of the innovations. You're still doing the same thing. For example, if you're cooking, then there are 4 or 5 things, and you can do it in a way that you can do faster in only half an hour as opposed to taking hour and a half. Those are also examples. E-commerce is another example of it. Apply existing ways in a new situation. So existing ways there, we are doing this, but you know what? How about applying this to doing that? Like, we are doing this in corporate world. Let's extend it to how education is delivered. So that is a new business model, and a lot of the startups are actually of this kind. Existing ways in a newer situation, and you have a business model there. And I'm using the word business model in a startup sense, but all I mean here is the innovation, how you innovate. You don't have to have a business around it. Do new things that don't exist. Now, this is where we all think innovation, chief innovation officer and product R&D, create, all the cool stuff that happens. It happens here. Do new things that don't exist. I mean, that's everybody understands. And the fourth innovation is providing insight. Now, that's also innovation. One is even telling you how many people came to this event and what has been the trend of our these 2 week IIT this center meetings like this, and then analyzing it and figuring out, what are people expecting. The number of people who are participating changes based on this topic, that topic. Oh, this is the hot topic. Algorithms to find patterns. Those are also insights, and that's also a business model around there. That's also innovation, figuring things out. And in fact, most of our intelligence, as human beings, we create these insights and experiences, and that is how we believe we become more meaningful to society, by having those insights and developing newer processes. And so basically, you have a certain process, but then the new tech comes, and that says, you know what, you can shrink these 5 steps into 2 because of this new tech. Instead of you having to go and read the meter, a sensor will read the meter and send you the data. Boom. So you have a new process there already. So as a tech automatically goes on its own, applying one of the top four creates a new way of doing newer processes also. So these are the 5 ways you do innovation. And all of these depends on having that open mindset about doing something. This is smart city globally. So that topic is closed now about the small things and how you innovate around those small things and how to innovate. Now I am moving to, this was supposed to be second half. So it's just, I'm not going to go through all of this, but you can see that the smart city investment globally is going to be so large that it is orders of our GDPs. It is that large. And now I know that a lot of that will be civil engineering work, some electrical, then electronics, then IT. So overall, together, it's going to be very large amount. So those who wish to be in this industry, whether they come in through AI or cloud or IoT, or there are several tech stuff in this world. And we think tech, we think IT, but I think civil is also tech, mechanical is, excuse me, also tech. So all of these techs come together. So smart city is founded on these techs that deliver those promises. And I think it's going to be very exciting for those who are in the area. So at the numbers that you can see, 14 times India GDP is going to be the global investment in smart cities. So I know I cannot see or talk to any of you, but let me just put this as a question. Which city is smarter, Surat or Paris? How do you compare? I mean, they give you 2 cities. A lot of us are tempted to say, oh, the good city is a smart city. Who look at London, they have great transportation. Look at Amsterdam, everyone is riding a cycle there, bicycle there. The Quito versus Shenzhen, Shenzhen has like large, huge highways, whereas Quito is a tiny city. We are, in my book and in my mind and whoever I'm talking to, I have been fighting this concept that a good city is not a smart city. It could be very expensive to be good. It could be it may cost you energy, it may cost you money, it may cost you several things to be that so-called good. Good does not necessarily mean smart. So let us look at what smart covers. So this is where, okay. So now if anybody asks you, is this a smart city thing or it's just a regular, is they're building a flyover or if they're building anything, then say it's part of smart city. A lot of cities are doing that smartly actually. They're taking money from smart city funds and they're investing in the civil infrastructure that they would have anyway should have invested as a part of their regular growth. And they call it a smart city. Either way, we will not get into that. But check if a plan is smart. Do more for less. That's the foundation of anything. That is basically, in my mind, that's the definition of smart. You're achieving more for less. Either you, and the ratio is basically that matters, whether whichever one moves, but the ratio should be higher. A subset of that is reduce the use of natural resources without reducing quality of life, or reduce more and increase that quality of life also. Reduce human effort, reduce waste, which is derived from the second point. If you reduce less resources, then your pollution should also be lower. Uh, Saving lives, protecting assets, that's about safety and security, and align governments to people's objectives. Now, this is something that we don't think about, but the governments have the habit of doing things uh, for populism, etc., etc. We should be able to have a sense about what the government is doing and is it really aligned to our long-term objectives. And at the end, costs should be within the reach of an average earner. So if the toll is, let's say in India, the toll is 400 rupees to go 20 kilometers, that is not workable. And that's just an example, the numbers can change. And similarly, reduce information and opportunity asymmetry. Now, there is an asymmetry in our society, in every society, US even possibly more, where there is opportunity is not the same to everybody. Information is the same information not available to everybody. So the smart world would ensure that the asymmetry is minimized, if not eliminated. So these are the targets of a smart city, and we do to become smarter. And so I have identified 12 key heads of smart. Infrastructure, I have put on top mainly because we all think infrastructure is the way to be smarter. Flyovers, tunnels, Ganga, travel by ships, etc. All of that, and ports, airports, etc. That is there. But let's look at other things as well, and I will tell you how to manage this entire thing altogether. Usually, we just list these things out and say, if you're doing well, then you are smart. But let us see how to be very smart about measuring smart also. So infrastructure, environment, culture, governance, safety. This is not in any particular order deliberately. Affordability, entertainment, um, human resources, education. We don't have time to go over all of these things, but each one is important, and the weightage of each one can be discussed another time. But each one is important, and they're integral, and they're independent of the other. So these are independent variables. And anticipate is the one that I have embedded all the tech inside that anticipate, that you should be able to anticipate things. And that is when your IoT comes in, where your all the tech investment and AI comes in, that you are able to anticipate the crowd and the traffic on a certain direction, or the possible avalanche, and all of that is coming under anticipate. uh, the all so-called IT tech, etc., is all part of that. Deep learning, all of that comes in there. Everything else is not around tech. So therefore, from this only, I certainly personally keep asserting that do not focus on tech as a part of smart. There are other things that you need to transform. There are other things that you need to improve, to, as I said, these are independent variables. So to become smarter. And these are the list. And so here's just the structure. Yeah, I drew a circle there, and instead of just making a list, I drew a circle and put these values around them. And I have drawn a line. So if I think this, let's look at this as a New York City, for example. I think I don't know what I had in mind when I drew this, but New York City fits. Infrastructure is not so good. So anyway, let's say they have trains and all that, metro and buses and trucks and taxis. So the infrastructure is reasonably good. They have good intelligence. Environment wise, they are not so good. Culture wise, they are neutral. Governance is fine. Disaster management is very good, especially now since 2011, 9/11, and health is fine and all that. Affordability is very low. Affordability is very low. So therefore, in my model, that is not smart. I think London, we may also fit into this, and some of the more so-called advanced cities will fit into this, but affordability will be low. Other things will be good. And therefore we cannot, even the culture part, and we'll talk about the culture. The culture, I don't mean the tradition and culture. That culture is a culture of working and living with other people. That's that culture. And environment wise also, they are very inefficient. So the smart city will have to be rated on all of these parameters. And infrastructure, inside infrastructure we have 10, 12 parameters. Inside environment we have 4, 5, 6 parameters: energy, petroleum, and then water, renewable part, non-renewable part. So we can break it down, and I have in my book. So all of that will in turn give you another structure. Like, so you can draw a similar circle for environment also, with maybe 6 parameters instead of 12. And what I do now is I draw a line around it outside, and I measure the area inside this. And so the area is, and then I divide by this area of the circle, and that gives me the index. So that is a smart city index. Like, instead of saying, oh, very good or not so good, and now I took me 2 hours, you just report this index. And to me, this index actually is a quality of life index in that city. These are big topics. I'm not getting into that, but a smart city index you can create simply by drawing this and dividing the area of the circle, and to get that neutral number, normalized figure. And I mean, it's very hard to get, as you see, if you 1 or 2 parameters, something gives in. Something gives in. If you look at a small village in India, then the infrastructure probably be adequate. I'm not saying they don't have big roads, but there's no jams, right? Because the needs are so low. People are just walking, and so therefore the infrastructure is fine. Environment is great. It's like good culture is good. Governance is, in terms of political governance, maybe small, but the internal governance, people are just not fighting all the time, etc. Is there. Safety is very good. People are generally very little crime in villages. I mean, maybe increased today. Disaster management will be lower. Health will be slightly lower. Education will be lower. So you can see that if you just create an area of a small village in India and the New York City, we don't know for sure which one will be smarter, because some of the parameters of New York City pull it down. Environment and affordability are 2. And then a small village will be pulled down possibly by disaster management and education, etc., possibly even health. So let's not declare somebody is smart just because it looks nice and wide roads. These are very small part. Wide road is part of infrastructure, and within infrastructure we have 12 other parameters. So it is out of the 12th, it is just one of the things. So that is how we measure it. So smart involves three, four things: reducing resources, which I'm repeating now, improving environment, improving convenience, and making it more affordable. All of that to make life better, enabled by technology. So this is a one pager that brings in all these variables together, and I put in the technology because technology is the one that allows you to do some of these things. Uh, I'm just checking time. Okay. This is just a concept. I don't have any follow-ups or slides on it, just to create awareness around it. So I've created this concept city OS. So city, the operating system is, I know it's a computer word, but it also relate to how things work, how things are designed to work. So the physical operating system is essentially how all the physical infrastructure is designed, developed, architected, interrelated, how they work with each other. So there is like a physical operating system that we know this is how things are operating, the roads, and then the zones, and the water supply, and the sewer system, and electricity. All of that is a physical part of it. And there's a cultural part of it that just, and I say that's a much longer discussion, so I'll simply sensitize you. Culture relates to how people are inclined to honor the system that has been created. And so, for example, if there is no camera, would you behave the same way? Many of us would, and some of us would say, there is nobody watching, let's just take this and go away. So now the number, the propensity, and the number or likelihood that a certain number of population would do behave differently in front of camera as opposed to behind the, or without the camera, that defines the culture of the place. And we can look at it and see how it relates to living also. And I have seen, especially in the US, people breaking things all the time, so much violence, etc. All relates to this is the city part of it. I don't mean the culture, the city part of the culture, where if there's a camera, people behave in front of people behave very refined. But behind, if there's nobody watching, the culture, the behavior changes significantly. And that is the culture part of it. So therefore, compliance to laws, behavior, courtesy, all of those things play a big role in the quality of life, and it is part of our culture. It's a cultural OS. The digital OS is the IoT and all this entire underlying sensor network and all the data you collect, and then the edge computing versus cloud computing, and all of that IT stuff that we keep talking about, storing data, retrieving information, creating actionable items, and then instructing the device itself to act, or instructing or raising alarm for people to act. All of that comes under digital OS, and most of us are likely to be involved with that. And then the word smart also probably relates to doing that. This is a basic framework of IoT. I will, most of you might know already, but so I'll go very quickly. The digital twin term I have not used, but what we do is we look at the real world, and we create digital abstractions of it, which you can call the digital twin. And that becomes the building or a bridge becomes a data element, data for us. And then the number of cars going through a particular road at particular time, all of that becomes parameterized, the bridge becomes parameterized. And then once everything comes to digital world, we do all of those things, communicate the data at the back, data center, all this analysis, big data, and then action in the real world also. So this is the foundation of IoT. I'm speaking very fast because I imagine most of you are techie and understand this already, but this is the basic concept of IoT, and which is the foundation of the digital frame part of the smart city. So real world converting to digital world, operating and relating and manipulating the data and figuring things out, and then acting on it. And that becomes your overall smartness. So if there's an accident, you figure out an accident, communicate the data on accident to some control center, which in turn sends people to help you police as well as ambulance. So this is a use case of how some of these things work. Nothing new here. So coming to the India smart cities, the 100 plan, it was, the idea was to accelerate growth and create centers of excellence, because there is so much weight, so much load on large cities, and everybody has to come to Bangalore and Hyderabad. There are like 5-6 cities, only 5-6 cities. And then very few are actually going to other cities. They go only if they cannot find it here. something here. So decentralization of economic activities. I mean, such a large population, and then imagine I'm also an immigrant to Bangalore and don't speak the language. Imagine living like a foreigner. I do, and but I would not have moved here had there been an opportunity to work where I was born, and that is true for everybody. Nobody wants to move because they are moving for, and then it breaks down families and all of that. It's terrible for people who are not living in their natural habitat. And so a smart city, I was very excited thinking that smart cities will create areas of economic activity distributed across the country, and that is happening to some extent, but not at the same pace, or maybe I wish it were more, or I wish we could create 3-4 Bangalores all over the country in different areas. So that will reduce migration and force cultural changes. People from Bihar go to Delhi and they fight this entire generation changing their accent so that they don't get recognized as. And then the next generation becomes naturalized Delhi, but the first generation who goes as laborer, etc., they have to struggle not just to live, but also to fight the cultural bias and all that. So, and that we also need to reduce weight on agriculture for employment. The smart city has to me, it was a game changer, and I hope it comes back with a bigger thing. Earlier, I used to interact with the minister a few times in conferences, or once I met him also, and he was so excited about doing some of those things. I think the momentum has either been lost, or I think it needs to be relaunched, because to me, this is not from the government. This is my creation. This slide is how India's smart city would be so meaningful, consistent with. And then suppose you create a city which has economic activities in let's say in the middle of Bengal, somewhere not Kolkata. Then the lifestyle, the cafeteria would make food which locals eat. Here I go to cafeteria, that's not my food, although I like it and love it. But that's not my food, but that's the cost I have to bear. And these are a small example of it. But then this is exactly what happens. It's slowly everything puts pressure. If I get caught by the police, I have no way to argue. What can I even say? So the thing is that if there is a local everything, then everything is local and everything is consistent. You create different countries essentially inside India. So why aren't cities becoming smart? So this is just my observation about why cities aren't becoming smart. And I had actually these slides I've taken, I had presented just about a couple of months ago in another conference in Paris, where this was the topic: why smart cities are not like booming worldwide. This is not just India. Like, why aren't smart cities happening, and why is it not consistent with the excitement that was created earlier? So this is my take on it. So first of all, everybody in India in particular, I've met with the smart city CEOs, and they don't know what to do. They just go into their office, they're IAS officers, and they have some administration training. They don't know about smart. And like Ashokji said, the next guy comes, he thinks smart is that. No definition of smart, no definition of list of things to do, no compliance. The central government says you create your own framework because you know what to do with your region. We don't want to impose things on you. But then that became too much to deal with. Maybe there should have been given some guideline that this is the kind of things that would be called smart, not the other ones. So what to do with smart? There's a lack of understanding about large transformative plans and defining ROIs. The reason I'm trained to define ROIs even for abstract things. I am trained, and many of you could also be. Give me a thing and I'll say, you know what, let's parameterize this, let's monetize this, exactly what the ROI would be. And I can create one. These guys don't have a sense of ROIs. They have more about compliance to governance and laws, and making sure that people have signed before releasing the funds, but not conceptualizing the ROI. So that is a challenge. And how to do these large smart transformation projects are multidisciplinary project. You have to think big. In my area of Elandur, they put the cement road, which is like 2 kilometers, and I was very happy that wow, cement road and so wide. And as they were completing the cement road, they were digging again. And cement road digging is very hard. And after digging cement, that part is still open about 2 feet wide, and that is the whole cement thing is gone. Everything is dirty again because of it flowing. So it's a multidisciplinary, multi-department project. Everybody has to work together, and therefore it has to be centralized effort, either as one leader or even there are several leaders. They have to integrate. And the governments have learned not to, the water department, electricity. This is no problem. I'm not saying anything new, but smart transformation, smart projects are also suffering from this, just like a regular other civil projects. And who to ask to do. For example, this is a conceptual problem. Now, if you're setting up a smart pole, the smart pole, and I like this example. Smart pole has a physical pole. It has to be dug inside. It has to be connected to power supply. It also has to be connected to data network. There will be a camera. There will be some processing there. There could be some lighting system there. It could be some sensors, which could also be doing some localized computing and be sending some information. So there will be communication there. So therefore, it would have a large number of so-called departments. Who do you give this job to? Do you give it to IBM to create the smart pole because there's so much IT there? Or would you give it to Wipro because there's light there? Or would you give it to there's some civil L&T for making? Who do you give this to? So this is also a problem, especially when it comes to smart. Okay. I will end after this. I have a few other slides which I'll skip. And then the next part is lack of long-term vision. You know, I went to Kanpur and I went to another city not Rajasthan, in the same trip. And both of them, they all wanted to do something so quick that the public gets to see, हाँ ये smart city चल रहा है. And so what Kanpur guys did is they put a gym in a park, and people were ridiculing, oh, yeah, smart city hai. But the thing is, they all want quick turnaround so that everybody can see, oh, the work is going on. And the elected governments have very limited time. So, you know, considering that, actually we suffer from this very badly. Nobody plans anything big because they want to show everything have to have happened right at the end before their term is over. And because of that, the longer term projects are bad. And I think this is one of the deeper reasons why we are not able to achieve a larger plan, because larger plan makes they don't care. So they need short term and quick solution and bottom up technology. So some vendor comes and say, we'll do smart parking, do smart parking, and they do smart parking, but like a company comes and says, I'll build a flyover, but the flyover is here, and then from here is a general road, and there's a gap of 2 feet in between, and then the 2 feet nobody knows how to deal with, because the flyover guy did their job and the road guy did their job, and this part was never incorporated in the discussion. That's what happens when you do in bits and pieces, and we see that everywhere. And in smart city also, there's the same thing. Bottom up technology, smart parking is done. So once you're inside the parking, there'll be some trick that tech would be playing to make it better. But then the rest of the world, it will be not connected, nothing else would be done. And end up, people will, and dogs will start sitting there, because since you don't have that electronic device to get in, nobody can get in, and the park is empty. So these are the kind of things we have seen. And the reason is not having a long-term view, trying to show off something so that there is a news in the paper that there is smart parking, and that's all they do. It's waste of money. I get being very angry also. And the last slide is the financial framework is not creative. I know I hear Nitin Gadkari talking about how he's able to create financial models, and he's able to achieve. I mean, as he said, and I can see that also by being very creative about financial models. That brain has to be there in most government officers to figure out a solution. In fact, when I was managing Mobi apps 2004-5, and we had these devices that we used to install in the public buses. So instead of taking money, during those days it was new. Instead of taking money, I said, give the space at the back. And we put this huge, our own, say, powered by Mobi apps, and a few things I wrote. I mean, we put together a big like a poster as an ad. And Mobi has become a very well-known company, and we got good funding, higher money. I mean, we got much better returns than giving away 600 devices that costed us 10K a piece. So the thing is that if you are creative, and now people have become very creative, but then no, creativity is also limited to 3-4 different areas. It's not really creativity. It's like a few other things have been added to the menu. You have to keep thinking about being creative. ROI model is not clear, I said that, but it relates to financing. Some of the returns are not monetizable, especially short term. So we have to think about the improvement in quality of life of citizens in the long run. Hopefully improving the tax base, hopefully adding more money to the tax in the future rather than directly connecting like a collecting toll. So those visions have to be there in place. And the poor contracting, it's to do with every government contract. I think most government contracts where it is done. I mean, there's a very long topic, but most of the contracts are done so poorly that there is a huge amount of play, either for bribes or for the contractors to play. And contractors suffer a lot more than they even, I mean, they have to pay bribe and then also suffer. So there's tons of inefficiencies in the system. So this is in India in particular, there the bribe part was India, I said, and many other countries, actually 90% of the countries. But the remaining, everything else applies to practically every country. I didn't mean this is only for India. Okay. Too many vendors. I have seen the vendors are themselves driving the decision of the CEO. So the vendors, it's like the judge and the criminal are same party essentially, because you are deciding in your own favor. And therefore, we end up having same 15, 20 ready solutions: lighting, parking, traffic monitoring, garbage collection. The same things runs in every city. Nothing so smart, nothing so innovative. Ashokji, back to you.
Thank you, Amitabh. We would really like to open up for questions. If you could type your questions or raise hands, you can even participate if Narayan is okay with that.
Yeah. I mean, it's now free for all. Anybody can come in and carry forward the discussion. It's a huge topic. So, Amitabh, what is the typical response from the city planning, city governance side, and from the BBMP? What do they feel? I mean, is it in terms of taking these concepts and actually practicing, putting, how receptive are they?
So the governments, you're just repeating, you're saying that how do the governments, government organizations, government agencies take these ideas?
Yeah, yes.
I think most of them complain because the legal framework, the regulatory framework is not clear. They also claim to be victims of the system, saying that, we are not allowed to do this, or we have, that's a different thing. We need a restructured framework to be able to execute such things. So I think the state governments, so to conclude in a private gathering of few people only, I can say the state governments are primarily responsible for not driving this with full conviction, because it requires changing of certain structural, roadblocks. And if you, for example, if you allow head of infrastructure as opposed to head of water and head of electricity, then head of infrastructure would be able to integrate several things into one comprehensive plan. And they don't have that. And why don't they do it? I think it's all relating to making money, etc. And the more work you give, the more repairs you do, and all of that. I don't know. But the thing is that most of them are considered also themselves as a victim of it.
So Sheila has to start to wrap up, but one question, one last one thought that, people say that you make the villages smart, cities will automatically go to more sustainability and smartness. What is your thought of that? See, today we are congested, a lot of migration. So if you start to decentralize, really decentralize the infrastructure, let the villages, let the small towns be smart. Why should people come to the cities?
Yeah, Ashok, there is one question in the Q&A box also. You can bring that.
I just saw it. Thanks for bringing PPP and data monetization items in the session. Request you to share some smart cities globally doing good in data monetization. Amitabh?
Okay, so let me address it. I mean, I have not done a global study, but I do know of few cities, mostly in the US and Europe, who are focused. So what they do is that the smarts as a part, and Narayan in Columbus is one of them. And even Ashokji, his daughter was studying, so we are all connected to Ohio State. So in Columbus, they have this, and there are several cities have this. This is nothing about Columbus only. So when the government becomes the smart city or initiatives, they collect data on so many different transactions, such as the traffic, the number of people going there. They relate it to patterns, movement of people on the different holiday seasons and all that. So lots of data is collected. In fact, which region people are walking more than the others. So such data is meaningful for people to sell their ads or promote their business. This is the foundation of the whole thing, that the government is collecting data for several reasons, not just for monetization or selling. And then you don't sell individual data, obviously not the person, but the statistical data about how things are moving. And then that data is meaningful for businesses. And they buy the data and then they say, you know what, I mean, even the advisory, that is this a good place to open a restaurant, that such things become meaningful only when the data is monetized. So data monetization is a very standard thing that is going on, especially in Europe and US, where they are collecting meaningful data. So, I mean, there is no question of challenging this as a good thing. Obviously, the government gets some money back. It is overall, it works well. There is an opportunity for the businesses to optimize their business models or plans. And the government uses it for safety and security. Government uses it for planning the traffic, the road, all of that. So data is the foundation of smart anyway. So the data you collect, even environmental data, about pollution data, about we have this Ganga, we are dipping these sensors and measuring the quality of water inside to check how dirty the water is. All of that is so one can monetize.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah,
I think it is time to wrap up. So I'll hand it over to Sushila.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this presentation, Amitabh. I thought there was a lot of detail and the examples were particularly interesting because they kind of helped us to understand the idea that you were talking about. What we saw today was smart is not about technology, but it is about that which makes sure that the earth is preserved. And definitely it's not about internet access. We started with some interesting statistics. So 700 liters of natural gas per person per day is what we are consuming. And that plus some other stark statistics about our daily lives, I think really brought home what it is that we are trying to achieve when we say, we're looking at smart and smart living. There are many ways to innovate, and technology is at the heart of it, but it is not about the technology itself. You defined the smartness as having three broad aspects: the digital, the physical, and the cultural. The cultural is something which we often forget about, and thank you for flagging it. And it came up again later in your presentation as well. So you talked about a smart city as something that enables improvement of the quality of life. And in that, it's issues such as how do you save long-term costs? How do you reduce the use of natural resources, reduce wastage, save lives, protect assets, but very, very importantly, the reduction of information and opportunity asymmetry. And this whole thing has many dimensions, and that circular chart was very useful to understand all of that. But it includes issues such as cultural and anticipation, which again is something we often forget about. So then we went on to talk about what it is that is required to implement a smart city. And it's things like long-term planning, being able to visualize right at the start and be able to put a lot of different things together in a very meaningful and sensible way. You did highlight a number of reasons why smart cities, cities are really not becoming smart, and it includes things like the lack of an understanding of what smart is about, which is really what at the heart of the discussion today in our webinar. And the fact that there are very few mature solutions for a few specific areas, the inability to find a good financial mechanism that works all around. Personally, I thought that framework of 555 was very interesting. It's something that you talked about in the context of the smart cities, but I think that is something we could apply for a number of situations in our own lives. So I just want to conclude by, you also mentioned India's idea of the 100 smart cities and what it is about, and highlighted some of the important goals of that whole movement. So I just want to say thank you very much. And Ashok, thank you ever so much for agreeing to be the interlocutor in today's discussion. Your insights and your work has been extremely important for bringing alive a lot of the discussion today. So with a lot of thanks to both of you, I want to also let our audience know this recording is going to be up on the IITACB YouTube channel on Monday. Please look for it there, and please do join us in our next edition of the IITACB webinar. With that, thank you very much.